it. But I worry that if I do, Catherine, who doesn't have any other family, might end up in a care facility. So I thought it might be better to just deal with it. However, one day, something happened that made me reconsider. That day, I planned to drop off my daughter Lily at my parents' house. They love having Lily over for sleepovers. Thanks for always bringing Lily. We love having her here. Why do you stay over sometimes too? My mom suggested. I'd love to, but I'm worried about leaving Catherine alone. I'll head home. Just don't spoil Lily with too many toys, I replied. After a nice chat, I left and headed back to our apartment where Catherine was waiting. When I got back, I realized I had forgotten my keys inside. At first, I was worried, but then I remembered Catherine was home. I tried calling her using the intercom, but there was no answer. Maybe she had gone out. I decided to wait outside for a while. But even after waiting for 2 hours until it got dark, Catherine didn't come back. When another resident returned and unlocked the main entrance, I followed them in. Catherine rarely goes out at night, so I was sure she was still at home. I rang the intercom again, but still no response. I could hear a faint sound from inside, confirming Catherine was there. I tried a few more times, but she refused to answer. Feeling defeated, I decided to stay at a nearby motel for the night and planned to sort things out when my husband Bob returned from his trip. What happened? Out shopping. I told Bob that Catherine had locked me out. He was understandably upset for me, but Catherine just brushed it off, saying, "Oh, maybe I didn't hear you because of my hearing. I'm getting old, you know," with a smirk on her face. I was relieved to be back inside. After getting my keys, I went to pick up Lily from my parents' house. When I talked to my parents about what happened, they said, "Sounds like Catherine is making things difficult for you. If it gets too much, you can always come back here." Their comforting words brought tears to my eyes, but I quickly wiped them away before heading home with Lily. For a while, things seemed okay with Catherine. But then, out of nowhere, Bob's international transfer became final. It was a permanent move, not just a short business trip. We finally bought a place, and now this international assignment. "What do you think?" Bob asked me. "I think it's best for you and Lily to stay in the US, I replied. But when he asked if I could handle living with my mom, I hesitated. Thinking about the potential stress it could cause Lily, I decided it would be better for us to stay in the US. After we made that decision, Bob had to leave for Europe. Although he was worried about us, he was really busy with work, so it was just me, Lily, and Catherine at home. But things quickly went downhill once Bob left for Europe. Catherine's attitude completely changed. On a stormy day when it wasn't safe to go outside, Catherine dropped a bombshell on me. "Now that Bob's gone, wouldn't it be better if you and Lily move out?" she said. "Excuse me? What do you mean?" I asked, shocked. "Just what I said. I'll take over from here. I just feel I can't relax with strangers in the house. I'd appreciate it if you could leave right now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Catherine's request felt like a slap in the face. Despite not being blood relatives, I had always treated her like family and tried my best to make our living situation comfortable. But to Catherine, it seemed like we were just unwanted guests. As I contemplated gathering our belongings and returning to my parents' place, Catherine uttered, "Instead of wasting time, why did you just leave?" Before I could react, Lily and I found ourselves standing outside, still in our everyday clothes, evicted from our own home. No matter how hard I knocked on the door, Catherine refused to let us back in. Lost and bewildered, I carried Lily through the pouring rain to a nearby park. Thankfully, there was a shelter there that provided some relief from the rain. Ideally, I would have checked into a motel or gone back to my parents' house. But I had left my wallet and phone inside. Feeling helpless, I sat in the park, trying to figure out what to do next. Time seemed to blur as the rain continued to pour down. Exhausted and cold, I started to drift off to sleep despite the darkness and biting cold. I worried about Lily catching a cold. As terrible as it seemed, the only option I could think of was to walk to my parents' house, even though it would take 3 hours. As I sat there pondering our predicament, I noticed two faint lights in the distance coming closer. Due to the rain, it was hard to see clearly, but I could make out that they were from two police officers. I thought maybe they could offer some assistance, but before I could approach them, one of the officers called out to me. "Are you Emma? And is this little one Lily?" the officer asked. Surprised by their recognition, I weakly replied, "Yes, that's us." "Please come to the station with us," the officer said. "Why, the police station?" I asked, feeling puzzled. Wondering if something was wrong, Lily and I followed the officer's instructions and got into the patrol car. We were shivering from being out in the rain for so long, but the officers had brought large towels to help keep us warm. "You might need these. We've got some spare clothes back at the station for you," they said kindly. Curious about why they knew about us and why we were headed to the police station, I asked, "How did you know where to find us?" They replied, "We'll explain everything once we're back at the station. For now, just try to relax." Exhausted, I soon drifted off to sleep and woke up to find that we had arrived at the police station. Following the officers inside, I was surprised to see Catherine and my uncle waiting there. "Uncle, what are you doing here?" I asked, puzzled by his presence. "He was contacted by Bob," my uncle explained. "Bob suspected you might be having problems with his mom, and since he's overseas, he asked me to keep an eye on things for him." According to my uncle, Bob had talked to him about this issue previously. He said Bob had asked him to keep an eye on things because he couldn't be there himself. My uncle had seen us out in the rain earlier today. He had considered taking us in himself, but he thought Catherine's actions were extreme, so he decided to report it to the police. That's how the officers knew where to find us and came to help. Catherine had also been summoned to the police station. She sat on a sofa, glaring at me, appearing unaware of why she was there. "Why do I have to be here? My knee is bad, you know. If Bob was here, this wouldn't be happening," Catherine argued. But the whole situation stemmed from Bob asking my uncle for help. In discussions with the police, it seemed likely that there could be legal consequences. Therefore, I was advised to consider hiring a lawyer. "That's an exaggeration. I just locked the door, that's all." "I didn't do anything else," Catherine defended herself. "Do you even realize what you've done? You threw Emma and a little child out in pouring rain. That's unforgivable." My uncle defended us, asserting that I was the rightful owner of the house. "That's impossible. Bob is the head of the household. He's the rightful owner. Now that he's not here, it should be mine," Catherine argued. Catherine believed Bob was the owner, but she was mistaken. In fact, my uncle, who runs a real estate business, helped us get a great deal on a condo. Bob suggested putting the property under my name. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now I'm grateful I listened to Bob's advice. Following my uncle's guidance, I decided to hire a lawyer. The lawyer explained that it would be difficult to remove Catherine from the house. Therefore, the best option might be to place her in a care facility. Upon hearing the lawyer's advice, I immediately called Bob to explain the situation. Bob hadn't realized the situation had escalated so much and said he wanted to return from Japan to discuss it properly. He also mentioned he was considering placing Catherine in a facility. Meanwhile, Catherine, oblivious to all this, was snacking on crackers casually at the police station. Since I couldn't return home with Catherine, I decided to stay with my parents until Bob returned. He would be back in a week, giving us time to think about our next steps. If Bob didn't support me, divorce seemed like the only option. I regretted not seeking advice sooner. A week later, Bob returned from Europe and was at the house with Catherine, so I moved back home from my parents' place. Bob had to return to Europe soon due to the urgency of his job. He could only stay in Japan for a few days, so we needed to discuss our next steps. I heard some things from Emma's uncle. "Is all of that true?" Bob asked. "It's all lies. I haven't done anything. Emma's plotting something to evict me." Catherine stubbornly refused to admit any wrongdoing. She even accused me of scheming against her. Bob, who I expected to support me, seemed to want to consider Catherine's perspective. I understand. So, do you have any evidence to prove Emma's plotting something? He asked. Evidence? Of course not, Catherine replied. I see. Emma, do you have any evidence? Bob turned to me. To be honest, I've been so busy with work, I haven't been able to keep an eye on things. I'm not sure who to believe, I admitted. I handed Bob something I had with me. What's this? He asked. It was a voice recorder I had been using. It contained recordings of Catherine's verbal abuse towards me, including the time she evicted us. When Bob played it, he heard Catherine saying hurtful things like, "Such a worthless wife. I wonder why he even married you." Hearing this, Catherine quickly began to defend herself. This is taken out of context. Everyone has their moments, right? I was just frustrated at that time, but it was just this once. As Catherine claimed this, the voice recorder played more recorded verbal abuses, showing that it wasn't just a one-time thing. Bob's hand, holding the voice recorder, trembled with tension and anger. Meanwhile, Catherine looked guilty. "Mom, what is this about?" Bob asked, but Catherine remained silent. "If you won't answer, then I assume this is all true. If so, I need to protect Emma and Lily. You understand that, right?" Bob's anger was palpable, something I had never seen in him before. Catherine, seeing this side of Bob for the first time too, looked frightened and couldn't say a word. After several discussions before Bob's return to Europe, I made it clear that I couldn't continue living with Catherine. With Lily around, I couldn't risk another incident like the one before. Bob seemed to agree, leaning towards placing Catherine in a care facility. However, Catherine strongly opposed the idea, making the discussions more complicated. Despite the opposition, I decided to sell the house. "You can't stay here anymore. If you don't want the facility, you'll need to find another place," I told Catherine. "How dare you decide this on your own? I won't allow you to sell the house." Catherine resisted the idea, but it was a difficult request to ignore. Lily and I had already decided to move to Europe. Bob regretted not being more present for his family and wanted to be there for us moving forward. Although I was hesitant about living abroad, knowing Bob would be with us reassured me. Plus, Lily is only 2, and it would be beneficial for her to learn and grow in Europe. Therefore, selling the condo, which still had a mortgage, was the only viable option. If we left it as it was, Catherine would have to cover the mortgage, but her fixed income wouldn't suffice. Given her future prospects, it was crucial for someone to assist her. Despite our efforts, Catherine refused to move into a facility voluntarily, so we had no choice but to arrange for her to be placed there forcefully. "I'm sorry, but I have to head back to Europe. Could you handle any necessary procedures here?" Bob asked before leaving. With the help of others, I managed to finalize Catherine's admission into the facility. The staff there kept me informed about her condition, but unfortunately, she wasn't doing well. It would be one thing if she were simply feeling down, but it seemed she was causing trouble for the staff and other residents. Before heading to Europe, I visited her to check on her well-being. However, she lashed out at me, accusing me of locking her up in the facility. She also complained to the staff about the food, comfort of the beds, and other residents' behavior, expressing frustration and dissatisfaction. When I apologized to the staff for Catherine's behavior, they were very understanding. "It's okay," one of them assured me. "We're used to dealing with this kind of behavior. Just leave it to us. We'll keep you updated, and if anything happens, we'll give you a call, so don't worry." Despite all the trouble Catherine caused me while we lived together, I couldn't help but feel concerned as I headed to Europe. When I arrived in Paris, Bob met me at the airport, and we went to the apartment we had rented. Rents in Paris are known to be higher than in Texas, but thanks to the housing allowance from Bob's company, we were lucky to find a spacious and affordable place. Living in Paris has been a delightful experience for me and Lily. Our neighbors are incredibly friendly, even though I'm still learning French. Recently, one neighbor shared wine and cheese with me, and I returned the favor with mac and cheese. I'm slowly learning French, and Lily is picking it up too. I've enrolled in a language school to improve further, where I've made friends with other Americans new to France. In the past, I had to constantly worry about Catherine back in the States, which often stopped me from fully enjoying outings with friends. But here in Paris, I can relax and enjoy leisurely lunches. My main concern now is Lily, who is still too young for kindergarten. Most kids in France start kindergarten at 5, so I hope she learns enough French by then. Luckily, Lily seems to be learning quickly. Once Lily starts preschool, I'm considering getting a job. Bob is supportive of me staying at home, but being in Paris has made me want to explore new opportunities. I've made friends with a waitress at a nearby cafe who hinted there might be a job for me there. The cafe is popular among Americans and locals learning English, so it could be a great fit. While there may be challenges ahead, living in France has strengthened our family bonds. I feel more confident expressing myself, and I believe we'll face any challenges together as a family. Overall, I've never been happier in my life.